Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
You and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you. Well,
but in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and
Yes.
a boundary might have been crossed that you, right?
That's
so
correct.
just an example
That's a
of,
good example.
it is a great example. I appreciate that for
Yes.
giving me the example to even work with.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen difference as negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?
We are links in a chain. Unimportant.
Hey.
What's up, everyone?
Hey, I'm Dr. Lynn, and you have tuned in to Working It Out Across Generations, and I'm here with my co-host,
Justin.
and we are really excited today to talk with you about this topic. Now, if this is the first time you've joined us here on the show, we are committed to talking about all things conflict, all of the types of situations you can get into, big, small, and in between, and also offer some tips on and reflections on some of the things you might be able to do to change it up, engage in it more productively, or even resolve the conflicts. So today's topic.
You took my part. So
Okay, well, we already got a conflict.
we're just gonna keep
Live.
We're just going to keep going.
I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, see, already I'm letting you know. This is how it goes. I got excited. What can I say?
Good for you. That was my part. So keep going. Keep going.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going. Topic today, how much emotional labor should we put on our friends? Hey, so you want to tell us why we're talking about that today?
Again, that's your part.
You could still tell us.
Yeah, you're like looking for conflict
You
to show
could
them
still
right now.
tell us why we're talking about that today, or what the topic means to you. Hey, okay, so no, we're not having this.
We're on air. Can you
I
read
know
the
we're
instructions
on
the
air.
way they were, the way I set them up, and stick to the
or you
program?
could just go with the flow.
This is not theater kids session,
Oh my gosh!
play
Unreal.
rehearsal.
Oh
We're on
my-
air.
I know we're on air.
please
And I
keep
was just
going.
trying to see if you would go with the
Keep
flow. So
going.
I'm going to keep going.
Good God.
Yeah.
I swear I want to be here. She's making it difficult. Keep going.
Okay, so the topic for me right, is one that, as I thought about it, was very interesting. But, so many people are depressed and anxious today, and there's just a lot going on. And while a lot of people are isolating or holding it to themselves, many people are talking about it, and not to therapists, or not just to therapists, but to their friends, with their friends. And there are some friends that won't engage at all. But then there are other friends who are giving an ear. But where does giving an ear cross a line into, these are the kind of things you need to be talking to your therapist about? That's why we really want to talk about it, because so many people are really disturbed, frightened by so many of the things that are going on, not just in the United States, but all over the world. And they are talking about it. And, it's not always a friendly ear that they meet, or if they do, sometimes that ear tires out. So, for me, I really like the topic, because as I thought about it, what's interesting is most of the people in my inner circle are therapists. They're not my therapists. It is true. Right? They're not my therapists, but they are therapists. That's what they do for a living, and they're really good at it. So it's an interesting thing when I'm in conversation with them, because for me, I think the shoe sometimes is on the other foot, where they kind of get into the moment to try to therapize me, which honestly, unless they really cross a line with me, I don't mind. I kind of like, hey, I'm between therapists, or so let's get it for free. But also because they know me. It's not like let's get it for free. It really is a job. It's that it's somebody that I trust, who I love, and who I know loves me, and they are using their skills, right, to try to help in the situation. But one thing that I love about them is that they will ask, so what do you want me to do here? Like, do you want advice? Do you want me to look, like, what do you want me to do? Because sometimes I will ask for advice, but I don't think I'm asking for it as a therapist. I think I'm asking for it as a friend. But who knows whether they feel like I've crossed the line into therapy and they've just hopped in with me, or whether they feel like, all right, I'll help her with this because this is what I do. But it is more therapy than it is friendship. I'm not sure. I just know I've been blessed with friends who I've never heard them say, you're really wearing me out here. You need to call your therapist or talk to a therapist. I've never heard them say that. They've always been very generous when I've asked for advice or their thoughts on the situation. But many people are not therapists, and I can understand where friendship feels like they've crossed the line, because you're the one that they're constantly talking to about this, or you're the one that they keep calling when it's dire, an emergency, crisis situation, and it feels just like a lot of heaviness, because the other thing is that they're not taking into consideration what's on your plate and how you're trying to deal. And maybe you're just hanging on yourself, right? But it seems to your friendship group that you're strong and you can handle the conversation. So.
Yeah, very, very interesting topic. I think it's an interesting one because we're all going to or have experienced this very thing that we're talking about, and probably on both sides, right? So I know for me, I was the friend that, people came to with their stuff. I still am that friend for some people. And I think over time, I've learned to get better at how I give my responses when I'm in that role. So I love how you already brought up do you need advice right now? Do you just need an ear? Do you just need a vent? Like, what do you just need the space? Literally just however you need, my response. It has nothing to do with what you tell me, how you tell me, right? Because there's times where it's not just heavy what the person's going to tell you, right? But they might have a lot of charge behind something that they're telling you, right? So if you're someone who doesn't do well with, i.e. yelling, right? And yet you have a friend that, just talks loud, gets passionate, and, sometimes you can't tell the difference, right? Between like passion or them really just being angry. I think, over time you learn through possibly one time being defensive and then, you guys talking about that after, hopefully, or just by straight up, if you've already been taught skills, to really just assess from there, like what they need and not really worry about what's coming up for you. Then I think that, there's just value in those times where you get it wrong, because it only is opportunities to not only strengthen the potential relationship, but also your discernment for how to show up in certain roles of that friendship. I think that, to be quite frank, friend and therapist are two completely different roles that deserve different expectations. And so I love that, one of the things that we had brought up, even just in our description, was is conflict erupting because there have been no clear boundaries set, right? I think that also comes from, expectations as well. So you set those boundaries, and then what's the potential aftermath of those choices, of those walls being put up, right? And being okay with that, right? I think that growing up, and when you're young, especially if I'm talking about my generational take, I think we learn very quickly as young people, or when you're young, like who aren't the safe spaces and like who aren't your friends, and like I feel like we kind of just like are taught to, in a way, whether that's just in our human nature or whatever, right? But we're taught to kind of see those things that we don't want, or the things that how we don't want to handle those things, right? And to stay away from them. And I think that while that's true and fair and cool in a way, right? I think when we're talking about growth and things like that, you need conflict to do that. And so it's tough, but I think we need to step into some of those like unknowns to then find out really what we like and what we don't, as far as the people we want around us, how we want them to respond to the stuff going on in our lives, and then being okay with that. You know what I mean? I mean, of course, it's tough to communicate boundaries, expectations, especially when people are coming up short. So that's another thing that can cause conflict in these kinds of relationships. There's friends that you feel like don't check up on you enough or at all, or there's friends that you feel like don't pick up or whatever it is. And how to work with that, or how to discern for yourself, like, okay, if this is a relationship I'm going to keep, what do I need to put in place to make sure that I'm not putting too much on them, and then I'm not getting upset at myself somehow for just misplaced boundaries or expectations. And so I see your face doing
but how
nothing.
Does that,
so,
yeah, I mean, I'm just listening really intently, because it brings up a lot of questions for me. I'm wondering how do you learn as a child that, who to talk to, who not to talk to, friendships as opposed to adults? I feel like a lot of what adults do is try to force kids to talk to them, right? It's even in the rules, right? Somebody's bothering you, they don't say, talk to that person necessarily. They find an adult, right? So I just wonder how you feel like you really learned that.
I feel like there's just a natural thing in young people. I don't know if this deteriorates over time, or I don't know. I haven't gotten to those other ages. But I think for young people, we are able to smell on someone whether or not they honestly walk this stuff that they talk. And that's also in our other young people, right? So like when we're at school, we're just analyzing each other all the time and analyzing what people are saying all the time about even themselves, about their family, about like their friendship, like whatever it is. We're just so hyper analyzing what people are saying to try to decipher what's real for them or not. Because there's definitely an element when you're young of trying to prove yourself, of trying to, say certain things in certain situations for some sort of gain, whether that's in the classroom or not, right? And so I think the same things that I say that we bring to adults, right, around like, smelling the BS on them, right? We get that from doing that with each other. So I know for me, like, it wasn't just an energy thing as to why people wanted to talk to me about stuff that was going on for them. Like, one, I not only modeled both healthily and unhealthily, right? Like when stuff was going on for me and like that I needed to talk to someone about it, it wasn't something that I was going to continue to bottle up like I am being reinforced to every day. My professional background, again, I started working in my professional background in this very topic, conflict resolution, since I was 10 and even a little earlier. So when I gave, if I was giving advice, when I did, it felt, from what I've heard, right? I'm just speaking out from what I've heard, but it felt like, oh, this is someone who might have like visited this topic before, right? And like maybe I can trust their word a little bit, based on, that he's in this room, he's talking to this person, he went through this, and he went and got help, like and so I think for me it was just like I modeled without even realizing that I was modeling for people. Like, when stuff's coming up, like you got to go to the right areas for a certain type of aid to then feel good about it, right? So I went to my friends with stuff all the time, quickly found out I can't go to my friends about a lot of this stuff. Yeah. Right. And so I said, all right, so I'm getting a therapist, or I'm doing this, or I'm throwing myself into this hobby, or I'm going to start taking my profession to the next level, whatever it was. I gave it a try. Mm-hmm. I figured out my errors. Right. But I also stayed true to my formula. I do things, which I know is very, very different. And I just think I've been on both sides, and there really is this conversation that needs to be had about not just boundaries being set, but expectations that we put on certain hubs or certain areas that we go to for healing or some sort of reconciliation. I think it's tough when you're a kid to go to another kid about some of the stuff going on, but
yeah, because they're trying to.
You do have to figure it out.
Yeah,
you do have to figure it out in the sense of giving them a chance, seeing how that works, working with what you got, and then try to build from there is something that you don't have.
Yeah, I mean, generationally for me, it's interesting. I grew up in a generation of kids should be seen and not heard, or all kinds of things that I think are detrimental to children learning how to talk about their problems or things that are on their mind and heart. My own personal situation, I really didn't have friends growing up. I didn't have anyone, even as an adult, that I could talk to or that I felt safe to talk to, because unfortunately, if I said anything that was against an adult in particular, I was not supported in any way. I just wasn't. Adults had license to say whatever they wanted to say to you, to discipline you, chastise you. I'm going to say rat you out to your parents. I don't care if they don't like that term, but whatever. It's still, all of that was in play when I was growing up. So as a child, I really didn't learn how to talk to friends. Like I said, I didn't have any. No one, I mean, there were people that I said hello to and that I may have played outside with, but they really weren't true friends, people I could confide in and tell my deepest, darkest secrets to, that kind of thing. And so it's for me, this friendship thing and where the lines are and how much you share, that's really for me discovered in my adulthood. And I really had to teach myself how to do that because I didn't trust anybody to talk to. I didn't even grow up with like a dog. I know some people talk to their dogs about what's on their hearts. I didn't know how to pour things out, right? And so it's interesting. It's interesting to me that once I did get friendships in my 30s, and they've been, they're 30-year friendships at this point now, that most of them are therapists. So that's interesting to me for somebody who had no one to talk to, for someone who had to learn how to really share what's on my heart, that the people that surround me are people that are qualified to actually listen.
I think there's also just like certain fundamental aspects to this that we don't spend enough time acknowledging in certain moments.
Okay.
It's simply that like the actual practices of like being a friend and being a therapist have completely different like codes of conduct, like completely different policies, completely like, so for instance, I think the best thing that I learned, right, is through, unfortunately, like, terrible ways, right? But the confidentiality piece, right?
Right.
You can assume and or take the chance on sharing something very personal with a friend. And to be quite frank, that friend as a person doesn't owe you the same level of holding that and not putting it somewhere else. Or if they put it somewhere, it's like not so out into the world. Because I also believe that when you write something down, you're putting it more out there.
You are.
Into the universe to be received, as opposed to just keeping it in your head, right? So I was trying to say, like, if you didn't go like tell someone else that thing, but you wrote it down, right? I think that's still a different way of putting it out there. But however, essentially, they just don't owe you that same like holding of that information as a therapist would.
Even if you ask them not to tell anybody, I understand
Correct.
that therapists
100%.
take that oath, and they
100%.
have to 100%, even if you
100%.
ask them. Okay, that's
100%.
interesting.
Because therapists are probably doing it too, just like over a drink.
I know one who did
over a drink, or the ones who will, tell the family stuff, and that's terrible. I think that's just absolutely horrible. But I just think that's a prime example of why this conversation is also about the expectations that we place.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I wish I learned a lot of this stuff in different circumstances.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I took the chances that I did in trusting people with certain information, in trusting people with, certain vulnerable parts of myself, to then learn how, like, to really just build my archetype of friend.
So you're glad that you learned even in challenging ways or wrong ways, difficult ways.
Only way I say that is because, yes, but the only reason I say that is because I got all these lessons in early.
Okay.
I want to be very clear. Like, I, for myself, was set on, I didn't want to do the whole, like, discovering myself, figuring myself out thing later. Like, I wanted to start there, figuring out who I am, or being comfortable in the things about myself that I don't like or that I'm not aware of yet, and go from there. And so the only reason I say anything about like I'm glad that it went that way, even though I'm really not, it's just because of how early it was. You know what I mean? Think about when we get older, right? We get access to more escapes. So that's like alcohol, that's all these other things, right? I just didn't want to do it that way. So yeah, I am grateful, right? Of course, it hurt in those moments, being so young and, just yearning for friendship or yearning for a sense of belonging, and then getting met with, the opposite, right? And things of that nature, and also from adults, right? But again, that's what led me to therapy, which was a seed planted that as I continue to water it, I learned where to find therapy in non-therapeutic spaces or relationships. So my therapy with my friends who I don't talk to, right, could come from playing basketball, could come from playing video games, going to shoot golf, going to the bars, whatever it is that we like to do. That could be my therapeutic thing, even though I'm not putting therapist expectations on them. And so again, you learn those things as you go on, right? But I'm grateful to even just be aware of how this stuff shows up for me at 24 than at even 30, discovering this stuff. So.
Right. But I have a question, because your generation, from my experience, what I've experienced, your generation, millennials, is the
we suck at this.
I was gonna say I hear so much. I don't have friends, I have associates, people that I know, right? Not necessarily people that I would consider real friends, or just really not connecting with people in deeper ways, because there's such distrust, and so much goes on social media that it's hard to trust and really confide in people. I'm wondering, is that just my interpretation, or is that really what's happening?
No, it's happening.
Okay.
I have days like that myself where I'm like that, and I snap out of it at some point, because I really am, blessed, and I have different networks for different things, right? And so I don't ever want to downplay what that certain place or area of my life does for me in the beneficial, stance, but absolutely, we somehow think that's like tough or like cool or like whatever. And to be quite frank, I would say, as someone who has a lot of issues, who's had a lot of issues, right? You're the problem. if you're making that your like way of being, your way of thinking when it comes to just like even just how we get together, because that's how deep it is. Like when you start thinking like that, it affects how you start showing up in rooms, how you start showing up for the people that are already there.
What do you mean by that?
When you start thinking, I don't have friends or I don't have associates, and you have to be on guard somehow with the people that you've known for years, all because you're in your own head about whatever's going on, or someone else's situation is making you think about stuff going on in your own life. That starts messing with how you show up in your own life, and it could be in areas that are already good and cool and okay. That can start to look like self-sabotage, right? You start spazzing a little more, or being a little more on edge, a little bit more, just reactive and not responsive, a little more dismissive of their experiences, their feelings, feeling like somehow they're asking you of how you're doing or whatever is somehow now like an interrogation. These are all things that happen when you start to water that seed of, I don't have friends, I just have sales. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a whatever. Like, there is an element of the popular loner that is cool. I would consider myself one of them. None of my friends are working in the field that I do. Like, they're way more like each other than like me. So I definitely feel an element of the popular loner, right, who spends a lot more time with myself, even though I have the option to go and engage with my friends, anytime, all the time, and that's a great thing. However, I have absolutely taken that thinking, started to water that seed, and I mean, within a week, I could tell like this just like doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel collaborative. This doesn't feel honorary of the fact that you really can't get anywhere that you need to get to alone. Even if that means on your journey, you stopped at some place to get this one thing that helped you on your trip. Like, that's still collaboration, help. That's still, so again, like, I think it's one of those things where we also need to start defining what friend means to us.
Yeah.
You know, do more constant check-ins with ourselves about if that definition is still true to us. And if it's shifted, what has it shifted to? Have you communicated how it's shifted? If it's showing up in certain friends where you want them to move with you and not, you know, kind of against the grain, whatever that really looks like or means for you. So there's just so many things to it, but I think that, you know, that thinking is just not I don't think it's a productive way of thinking when we are such a world that's about collaboration and even just helping each other in the midst of a pit stop.
Yeah, because we got to move forward, and if the world becomes more reclusive, then it's going to be a lot harder on relationships, right? And I will say, from my generation, one of the things that really bothers me, I appreciate that people are who they are and they have to be true to themselves, but I see too many people who aren't able still to open up and talk about things that are hurting them or things that have hurt them, or people like they really don't want to get personal, right? That I think holds you back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people also consider, you know, their status in the friend group or whatever, and they think, you know, like you said, oh, I don't want to come off weak, or I don't want to, you know, I don't want to throw off the vibe and whatever. And my whole thing is, you know, yes, there's an element of boundary setting, expectation setting, as we've been talking about, but anyone who tries to make you feel like a buzzkill or whatever for life just happening and you just expressing how life happening is making you feel, not a real friend. And that's where I would advise going to a therapist, or at least a space that is therapeutic for you, so that it makes, if that relationship is still one you want to keep, something you're able to show up in, and you'll be able to show up even stronger knowing you have different hubs and different sanctuaries for different things that, you know, they either can or can't help you out with or through. So I think it's a good conversation.
I did too. Now
that we're back on track, and
we were on track from the beginning,
and reading
and
things
we don't have to always go by what is on the paper. Sometimes we can flow in the moment.
I like a script.
Yes, you do.
In some areas.
And see, here's the thing. We model for you.
I like an outline.
Right? I can go with the flow. And you like a script and outline. I do like scripting things too. And that's interesting because when we do other work, you're like, why do you have a script?
So I just said that. It's recorded. I just said that. I said, this is an area I like the script.
Oh, okay.
I said, it's not, this is an area I like the script.
And this is the area I can go with the flow.
But I always do like an outline. I've never been.
I like an outline.
I like an outline for them.
Sometimes you don't always go in order, and I feel like you could go with the flow and just go. But okie dokie.
Sometimes, man. Sometimes.
All right.
So
let's get back on track.
Now, today we're going to be talking about. We have a few things for you, but I think the first thing we want to get into is just 3 ways to tell if you are the person that's somehow crossing a line, crossing a boundary in this friendship or whatever is going on. And first way, you literally start scheduling regular appointments to speak about the things that are going on in your life. I need you at this time, on this day. Are you free? Or I think the worst is if you just call out of nowhere and you just.
But y'all don't like calling anyway.
And so what we do, sometimes we'll skip the appointment thing and we'll just assume that because you're my therapist and no one else is, and you understand me more than you understand anyone else, you have to answer that phone. And I think 100% that's just a sign, just a sign, just a thing to be on alert for, as far as, yes, this is a space you feel safe in, but are there others? You know what I mean? Like in the case in which that person can't pick up, can't be there, could you go somewhere else or do something else or talk to someone else until they even get back to you, if that even happens. Sometimes that's another thing we do. We'll just ignore the call or watch it ring or whatever, knowing stuff's going. We're kind of messed up. But I think that's absolutely just something to be on alert for. You know, if you're really just like once a week, twice a week, and no payment,
What you doing 5 o'clock tomorrow? And 5 o'clock, and they're like, again, we got to talk. Yeah, I think that you really definitely gotten to a place where you are putting too much emotional labor on that person. I mean, if your phone rings and even your kids are like, oh, is that Susie again? You know, like, yeah, every Friday at 6 o'clock, she's calling. You know, hey, you're putting too much pressure on that relationship.
Absolutely. Next, I would say you're seeking constant validation, right? So you're asking, you know, what do you think I should do? You know what I mean? Even if you made the choices already and you're kind of reviewing the game footage, right? It's like, what do you think, you know, I should do next time? Or how do you think, right? And I think that in the friendship, right, you're just two completely different people. Even if you are very, very similar, right? There are just certain fundamental things about how you do things that are different. And I just think that, you know, you seeking that constant validation externally will only just make it more difficult to trust yourself that you're making the right decisions for yourself, right? And I've been a firm believer since I was a toddler that no one knows me better than I know me.
That is true.
And so
that's your belief.
And so and
it's a good one.
Because it's true.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
no, like I laugh when people like have a knee-jerk reaction to that. I think it's absolutely true. But like, yeah, you got to start building that comfort within yourself, because you were born in this world. You're gonna go from this world as yourself, and it's all about in between, just making sure you understand your soul and your spirit as much as possible, so that when you go into whatever next phase, chapter, sphere of life, you know, you have trust in you, and that you understand you and what you need. So I think just careful of that. Of course, we all want to seek validation at some point, and at certain times, especially from even like a parent. If you have a good relationship with your parents, or a friendship element in your familial relationships, just make sure you're careful of how much of that you're seeking or how you go seeking.
Yeah, I think the older you get, the more, honestly, you just gotta stop asking. You gotta trust in yourself, do what you do, learn from the experience, get data and apply it, get new skills, and move forward, keep moving forward and learning more about you. As somebody who was not allowed to learn about me at growing up, and it's caused so many problems in my life as an adult, as far as I'm concerned, and who is now, you know, I've been committed to learning about me. I feel like at some point it's like, nah, I ain't asking you, because you are not me. and you are not in this situation. Even if you've been in this situation, if you really need professional help, that's one thing. But as friends really need to learn to listen more and encourage more, unless you really are going down the wrong path, like the wrong path, not the path that you think is wrong, but like you're really heading for trouble in your life.
Yeah, I like that. And then lastly, I would say they start avoiding you. People start avoiding you. This is actually insane that I'm about to bring this up on this show. But I'm watching the show. Shout out my girlfriend that she put me on to. It's called Love Island.
Oh.
And it's so funny. I don't know how I started thinking about this now, literally as we're live, but there's a character on there who, you know, again, with this show, they're like put in on a villa somewhere, no phones. They got to kind of make friendships with the people that are there on top of these romantic connections. And there was one of them who just had, I mean, a terrible up and down experience with this guy for the first, like, it's like a 6-week thing. For the first 4, she was having stuff going on. And when I tell you, any chance that she was given the mic, that's what she was talking about. The problems they were having, the issues that were coming up within her being just who she is and how they are together and all these sort of things. And over time, you literally can start to see, like, the people, like, as weeks go on, the people around her start, like, getting up from their seats and leaving the conversation, either leaving her alone or to, like, one other person who is not only nice enough, but also is probably just like, damn, I didn't get up quick enough. Because, like I really started listening, and they were plotting their whole escape. I'm over here listening, being a good friend, right? And it sucks because it's like, this is a cool person, and cool or not, whatever that means and looks like to you, we all deserve people to talk to and to have those moments with. But when I tell you, this girl could not read the room if she had a perfect prescription on her glasses. It was like to the point where they're like slowly moving off the couch, like slowly getting up and like trying to act like they're going to do something else. And I just think, you don't want to be that person. It's just a very selfish way to be that will only lead you to a feeling of loneliness. Yeah. So even though it's an area where she should have happily had a space, right, to talk about these things, and there was stuff going on. It wasn't just like in her head. There was stuff going on. Yeah. And elements to it. And on the other end, you want to make sure reciprocity is even something that people are all collectively landing on at one point. Like, you want to make sure you're just reading the room and, not hogging the mic. So definitely, if you notice people start taking a little longer to respond, they're not picking up the same.
They run when
they see you, I gotta go. I have this right. Or the dynamics of your hangouts change. So you not just sitting around playing video games. Y'all might be going to do something where y'all aren't talking as much, right? Whatever it is, I think you want to just start taking notes of that if you're someone who, is really seeking those spaces all the time, because we don't want anyone feeling like they can't talk to the people that say that they care about them.
Right. And everybody deserves to be listened to.
Absolutely.
So if it's not in your friendship group, then please seek therapy.
And shout out Love Island. Shout out my girlfriend. If anyone's watching that show right now, that show's money. I'm having a great time. But I think that that's absolutely hilarious. And it actually started to piss me off at first, because I was like, yeah, why is she hogging the mic? Da, 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 da. And then as soon as I started to see people like doing all that, I was like, all right, well, we can have a conversation around expectations here and boundaries. So
it's funny.
That's all it is. Lay the foundations.
Well, okay. So that's one side of things. But how about 3 things to do if your friend has crossed that line, right? Because it could be happening to you and you don't even know what to do, right? So we have some suggestions. Give them a fair shot to correct it. I mean, a fair shot, I don't think a fair shot means, okay, I'm going to see, I'm going to give them like 3 times, 3 interactions. And if they keep doing it, then they're done. I mean, you got to speak up. You need to say, hey, I feel like you're leaning on me a lot. Or I feel like this is becoming more like therapy, or I feel like there's a lot going on for you. And I really want to make sure that you have somebody to talk to it, but it's weighing on me, or it feels like it's only me. Well, whatever it is, in a kind enough way to be able to let them know what's going on for you.
I like it. I think, just, it's like, it's finding that line, kind of similar to when people say, like, they forgive, but they don't forget. Like there has to be an element of not like forgetting, but like really forgiving too. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but like find that line. And then don't be hard on yourself, afraid or whatever, if that line changes and shifts form in any way, gets longer, gets thinner, whatever it is. We're constantly evolving, constantly growing. And so, especially when it comes to the people that we have around us, keep doing those check-ins. And if the answers are coming up different at some point, that's okay. And just work with what's coming up.
Yep.
That's what I would say. But I like that a lot. Gotta give it a fair shot.
Yep. Encourage therapy. I hope folks believe in therapy. We've talked about therapy quite a bit on this show. We are believers in it. We've seen it work for people. I mean, hey, I'm a believer in it. It ain't worked for me for the most part. So, but I believe.
Here I am about to give some hope. Who talks about it?
They work for me. I did not have the right therapist, but I absolutely believe in it and expect to return to it. And prayerfully, we'll get the right one this time because it's been way too many attempts. But sorry for diverting. We believe.
I feel that.
We believe in it. We really do. And just as a friend, if you feel like they're putting way too much on you, they've really pushed a lot. And they have a lot on their mind. They have a lot on their heart, right? A lot on their plate. Then please encourage them to get therapy. If you are not a believer in it, I think that doesn't mean that someone else can't be and can't benefit from it. So still, that is a resource that people have tried. So encourage that.
I like that. I think that there's just an element of having your own worlds within your world that is just so cool. And so, it really doesn't have to be this like, you always got something going on, or I don't have time, or you don't think about me, and you don't, and those things can be true, right? But it's really like, I think when we go to just the conversation around how we encouraged it, one of the ways that you could bring it up is like, just like that's your own world that you can build from scratch. You know what I mean? Like completely from scratch. I thought it was so cool when I was a kid, first exposed to this idea that I could have a work life and a work life that no one knows about unless you're actually in my work world, school life or social life that no one knows about unless you're actually in that world, and then family, and then my own. And part of what was my own, as far as the first hub that I built, was therapy, and just having a space to talk about what would come up in the building of this new world within all these other areas that I exist. And so I just think it's so cool. Again, I'm an advocate of it, but I completely understand how there are therapists out there who are unfortunately, out there giving people not great experiences.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's the majority of them.
I think it's the majority, but I think there's also a lot of undocumented stuff there. So I just think if you're a therapist who abuses that license and whatever, I got my own words for you. But, for the ones that are good, for the ones that really care, I only want to bring you more, not work, because that sounds like I'm just like transporting people
to help.
But I want to bring you more people to help, and help people that need the help understand that you are a safer space than they think.
Yeah.
So definitely just encourage. I think the key word's encourage.
Yeah.
It's not just about telling them or planting the seed. Like,
Speak out.
There's a cool, like tell them the cool element to it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we need to hear the cool element to something that feels lame. Which I find don't have better words, but
Yes. So, and then the third one is set boundaries. We really do. I mean, I have to say, I'll take my work life into consideration. I have noticed that there is no such thing. I am an entrepreneur, so I don't work 9 to 5. And even in some professions, when you work for someone else, even when they say the hours are 9 to 5, they really aren't. But my experience as an entrepreneur is that folks are like on business on clock 24/7, and I'm just not that person. Don't come to me with some business discussion at 10 o'clock at night. I'm a morning person, but don't come to me with some business discussion at 6 a.m. So the same thing, right? What are the boundaries that are set? You know, everybody's on social media on the weekends. I had to stop that. I'm like, it's too much. So all of us are entitled to set boundaries in every part of our lives. So set the boundaries. What's the thing for you? Hey, I love listening and having the conversation, but it has to be within, right? And you have to give me space to breathe, and you have to understand I'm not always going to be able to pick up the phone or whatever it is, but speak up. First think what really is healthy and works for you, and then set them with that person, and then insist that they're going to have to work within those boundaries for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that goes for everyone. You got to respect them too. You know what I mean? Like, you got to respect your own boundaries of yourself, respect that that's what it is for you, and that's what it is. But then also, put your foot down about the things that you need to put your foot down with others, and, you know, really take notes on how they are respecting of your boundaries. And so, because I feel like there's adults that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like there's adults that struggle with respecting a boundary.
I was just talking about that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I blanked out for that, I guess. But I think there's adults that even struggle with that.
Where do y'all learn it from? But adults that struggle with boundaries.
Unfortunately.
And one thing that just came up to me again, because we're talking about mental health always all the time, and certainly within this topic, is to understand when, for the sake of that person's safety, you may have to break a boundary. And what I mean by that is, you know, if they're talking about harming themselves or harming others, and you just really have to tell someone, then you're going to have to do that. But for the most part, that's not what happens. It's just they push you to the extent that you realize, I need to set up some boundaries, and you really do.
I like that. That's actually a very valid point. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
All right. So what do you think? What are your closing words for today? Or am I out of order? Final thoughts. Both of us could do. So what about you?
She thought she ate with that one.
I did not.
She thought she ate. I think, you know, it really is such a expectation talk as well. I really stand on that, you know, so I think we have to just think about our fundamental foundations of how we think of a friend, what we think of therapy when that was first brought up, right? Like, we can go back to those first times in which we thought about these things, right? And take it from there as far as where to build, because this is just such a fundamental and foundational piece of life, right? Having friendships, but also having friendships where you can talk deeply, having friendships where you can share stories, we can be fully yourself, right? Like, this is such a 101 area of life that I feel like there's times where we kind of throw away our old notebooks of whatever we jotted down from when we first were introduced to us. And, you know, we can preserve some of that, because that's all good data for how we really see the world and how we want to contribute to the world that we're building. So I just think, you know, be real with yourself, be honest with yourself, you know, stand on your stuff, because, you know, whatever leaves your life will somehow be replaced with something that's more fitting. That's something that I truly, you know, believe, you know, about recycling. That's what I think. I think stand on those boundaries.
Yeah, I think we want to build better friendships, and one of the ways is, first of all, to take it as an honor that someone feels like you're someone they can talk to and that truly listens to them, because that is not how most people are treated in this world. And then learn how to be able to speak up, set those boundaries, and to act in love and encouragement. That's what I got.
Cool. If you enjoyed Working It Out Across Generations, you want to see more, check us out on e360tv.com, Trajectory channel. We're also on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can also check us out on Facebook at Working It Out TV Show. Also, if you want to subscribe to our YouTube, check us out, Working It Out Across Generations. And if you want to just hit us up, send some love, send comments, show topics, anything that's just been coming up for you, here's our email at Working It Out Across the Generations at e360tvlive.com. Guys, you know what we say. We are truly thankful for every like, share, comment, view. We really believe that small is all. We're building towards something that's bigger than us, that will have a long-lasting effect on generations to come. And truly, we love these topics. We love having these conversations. We're just trying to make people, have a better relationship with conflict, as well as just approach conflicting conversations a little easier. So you guys help us do that, and we really, really appreciate it. So I'm Justin.
And I'm Dr. Lynn, and you know what we say, conflict is here to teach us something about ourselves. So go out there and learn, find out what it is.
See you next week.
Let's be the change we want.